three.
Who do we have on? Gary's part of the committee.
Yeah.
So that's, we got enough.
Gary's not.
No, he's not a member, but
Gary isn't, no.
he's got enough here.
What about, who's not missing? Who's, Peter is missing, and who else?
I think that's,
Commissioner Gentile.
That's it? Okay.
is Joan?
Mr. Chairman, before we start, just a note for the record that we finally have Scott sitting on the right side of you on this here, because we had a mirror image, you know, and I asked
Sitting on this side.
well, that's the way it was, but today Scott is on your left if you look at the image. So we finally got that straightened out. Yeah.
We're actually going to, just as it's just helpful for the commissioners, we're going to add another monitor, but in the lunchroom. It'll have sound, but you won't be able to communicate. But it's just so that when you're sitting there having lunch, you can see what's going on. You're waiting for the committee to end. It just gives you, and then we'll also be able to use it for our own presentations and those kinds of things. So
That's a great idea, Scott, and I think that you should go ahead and do that. The only other thing I've asked the district clerk about was the microphone for the chairman. That, you know, we had the way it was before. The chairman had a mic like right in front of him so that we could hear him. So the way it is now, I mean, I'm speaking for myself because I am hearing impaired, you know, and I wear hearing aids and everything, but. You know, some of our chairs are soft-spoken, and they're hard to hear. Chairman DeBello and particularly, you know, Chairman Taylor, you know, are soft-spoken guys. Now, there hasn't been a single instance where I couldn't hear you, Scott. There's never been an instance where I couldn't hear you, Scott.
well, you know what we can do? We can see.
No matter where you're standing in the building.
These are more sensitive. These
They are very sensitive.
much more
I mean,
sensitive.
You know, that's
And I don't know,
part of
I
the
haven't
problem
heard,
is
I
that
can't hear what you're
if
hearing.
Chris is talking and that mic is on, you can hear Chris. But I don't know if it's possible. We'll talk to their IT staff. Maybe there's some way we can
Just get the
have
volume up a little bit.
microphones.
I have my own hearing aid.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had difficulty. Even the person who was making presentation was soft spoken. He was talking as if he was talking one-to-one with somebody, and I couldn't hear. So they told me maybe on this side is better. So today I changed my seat from here to here. So it needs to be fine-tuned.
I know you've talked to John about that. I think.
Yeah, he said there was an issue with feedback sometimes, but that's why I think if there was an individual mic for the chairman, there wouldn't be that issue if it was right in front of him. So
We had the IT people in here, I think it was yesterday.
Yesterday.
So I'm sure they were working on that, but I'll check with him. He's out today, but I'll check with him.
they've done so much work on
Yeah,
this
they have.
thing. It's in a short period
Well,
of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't mean to interrupt your proceedings, but I thought that, you know, it seems like that we're getting some adjustments, so it's starting to work better. And I think that Scott's right. If we had one in the other room, it would be helpful as well. So.
But don't put the speakers there.
No.
Right.
You know what?
No.
Oh, no, yeah.
No, that's just for viewing only.
Would the meeting, please call the meeting to order. Public comments relative to agenda items. Anybody on the, item 3, approval of minutes of August 10th, 2023. Moved and seconded. Are there any additions or deletions? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 4, discussion regarding 2023 RFI 01 submittal of CTEC Energy Sales Incorporated. Where do you want to start there? Okay. We have a series of responses, Scott,
Yes.
that were made by CTEC to questions. I think there was
There's a lot of questions.
83
Yeah.
questions that were asked.
Yep.
And these are the responses. Do you want to discuss those?
So we're trying to follow the same process as we followed for all and for the future proposals. So we did the same thing we did with REA. We obviously we sit and listened as the committee did to the presentation. And I really go back to, again, there's a lot of technical questions here that there's no sense in getting into unless you pass this levels. Like we did the same thing with REA. So as it relates to the questions, the real question I had in the presentation was, it'd be nice to see like the equipment. We'd like to see what does this equipment look like? What is it? What is it? What is the where is it operating? And I know they've said on a couple of occasions they're in UK, they're in all across the country or the world. Sorry, it would be nice to have seen this unit in operation. So So that was one of my questions I had, like, where is this operating? And I know they've mentioned UK, and in a couple of correspondence back a couple of years ago, they mentioned a hospital in the UK. So where is it? Like, show me.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but the question you're asking, is it relative to solid waste? Or is what they did
Right.
is they presented two
Yeah. No.
alternatives here.
I'm looking for, give me some examples of, in their proposals, they've identified MSW, medical waste, and other types of plastics. So, show me, like, how does this thing work? Like, how do you feed it? How do you, I think someone at the proposal mentioned with a hopper, but it'd be nice to see this thing operational. So on my day off on the weekend, I Googled, just trying to find this equipment somewhere, and we found the video, which was, I think everybody saw.
It's
Did
about
everybody get a
3 or
chance to
4
see
years
it?
old, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like November of 20.
Yeah.
So I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at it. Did everybody have a chance to look at it?
I looked at it.
Yeah. So we have it. We can play it. It's only 10 minutes.
Excuse me, we sent out a copy to each one of
Yes, we did.
of the board members.
Yeah,
So
I don't
they have
think
it
we
physically.
didn't send it to Commissioner Blupin, but so my question, it's a simple question, is that it looked like it was, they said it was ready to be up and running in a couple of months. So it'd be nice to know, like, how is that equipment operating now? Is it operational? It was November 2020. So that was just one of my basic questions. Like, tell me where this thing is operating, not like general statements, but what facility. It'd be nice to know the emissions components of their presentation. They do have a third party that they had on the line. I forgot their name. It'd be nice to know that third party actually went to one of these facilities and verified the emissions that they're identifying. So that's really the starting point for me. Like, I'd like to see something from one of these sites that is actually operational. One thing when REA came in, they did the video, which was good. But at the point, REA was not producing. So it'd just be nice to know, where are they producing MSW, medical waste, whatever they have proposed. That's one of my basic questions, right? Getting into the technical details it's the cart before the horse. That's my question.
Well, I think they specified, but physical locations aren't anywhere that we have immediate access to it. We'd have to travel a rather lengthy distance.
Yeah, I think less 25 locations.
Right. So, and again, that's a legitimate question. I'm
Yeah,
not saying it isn't
so
legitimate.
that's really where my starting point is.
Okay. And again, I guess the other questions were the,
Bill, can I ask a question?
sure, go ahead.
For me, a question, I look at this thing, and I liked what I saw, I'll be honest with you, but what do we do with it? In terms of, again, I forget about the technical question, I'm gonna assume it works, but are we interested in getting into solid waste? And personally, I think we should be. I'm not sure what deep is and all that stuff, but if that's the direction we think we can go for revenue and something big, I think we should go into it harder. Again, but we need a bigger group to decide that and get some numbers. But if we don't do that, right? No, I understand that. But if we don't do that, or not interested in doing that, what do we do with this? I don't know what you do with it right now.
Can I address that?
That's a question.
I think when we initially talked about this, there was not a solid waste component.
Right.
They were strictly in hospital waste, and they also were developing technologies and relative to sludge and things of that nature, PFAS. They articulate them here that they have patents for that type of a process. They also apparently entered in, and I have had no conversations with any of them, so I don't know that now.
But again, that's.
Let me just.
And let me finish.
Let
No, let me finish it. He had a $400 million solution he came up with. Remember he said 400 million do the whole thing? Yeah. If we're interested in that, I think we should be, but that's just me. Then I'll go back to you, then that's we should look at. But other than that, I don't know what you do with this thing, or us.
Well,
I think it's good technology, but.
Again, I don't believe when we initially, at least the conversation I had with them 4 or 5 months ago, was there ever the existence of the solid waste? We never talked to them about solid waste.
Yeah, no, no.
Not the relationship they're in
Solid
now.
waste, sorry, we're talking MSW, right?
MSW.
Yeah, MSW. Yeah, the initial conversations we started having with them a couple of years ago was about sludge, human
Right.
sludge. And then when we talked through this here, we decided that we knew that MSW was a major problem in everywhere, not just, Connecticut, but it's a major problem. Massachusetts has got a major problem. Everybody's got a major problem with MSW. So the question became, should we modify the concept that CTEC was proposing to us on sludge and look at the technology in terms of MSW? And if you look at CTEC and other technologies, gasifiers, pyrolysis, we've said this 1,000 times. The one thing that a technology like that needs, it needs a dry product.
Filler.
So 10% moisture only. And so MSW fits that. And they do, CTEC does suggest that they do MSW across the world, medical waste across the world. So I think it's a policy question for whether or not the board decides to get into MSW. I don't think the state's ever going to. They tried. They spent 4 years trying to get off the dime on MSW, and it never happened.
Yeah.
And I think if it's going to happen, probably someone like the MDC is going to be the one to have to do it. But on the question specific to CTEC, it'd be nice to see this thing operating somewhere.
Okay.
Right?
Can I finish
Yes.
where I was discussing the issue of how I think solid waste gets there and does it make sense? And again, Scott raises the question of the filler. In other words, to get the liquid to solid to 10%
Dry, yeah.
dry. There was discussion in the white paper about wood chips, which made no sense to transport them, and I think you point
Right.
that out. Then they did say, however, solid waste would meet, or municipal waste would meet the same standard as a filler. That's how that got into it. That's when you raised the question, that would be a legitimate position. They, subsequent to that, and subsequent to any conversations we've had with them since then, entered into an agreement with a company that does do this with solid waste, municipal waste. And as a result, they have put a proposal in here that has that included in it,
Right.
which we were not aware of, at least when we initially talked to them. Now, that whole question Scott raises is something the state has been struggling with. We got involved in this 40 years ago, 35 years ago, we got involved in it. We were in it for 30 years, I believe the contract ran for. So we do understand solid waste. We understand how it operates. Again, do we have a technology? We don't have a technology, nor does the state. 6 years or 8 years ago, they spent at least a year,
4 years.
4 years,
4
but,
years.
and about what, $4 or $5 million worth of expense to deal with that issue, and they couldn't come up with a solution. The legislature, in its wisdom, in the last session of the legislature grasped the issue, and I believe it was Senator Needleman, that's chairman of the Energy Committee, submitted legislation relative to moving forward in this area, and the governor also entered into the discussion, and he wanted to keep Mura alive to deal with that issue also. That was part of his proposal. The legislature came out with sort of a mix of everything. Mura's still in business. It's not been operating. They're shipping the solid waste in the state of Connecticut. They got another 2.5 years, I think, to go on it. And that tipping fee now, I believe, and this is going into the third year, is somewhere in excess of $120 or $25 or $30 a ton, where they're going. That does not include transportation. Or, yeah, it would include including transportation. So the bill that came out keeps Mura alive. They're still looking at options at DEEP, and now the city of Hartford is about to make a selection of their 5 members that will serve on Mura going forward, because they disbanded that issue, but now the legislature has given them the authority to do that again. So when we talk about solid waste in the region, it makes sense to someone like us, because the major problem that DEEP had was that there was no public agency involved in the question of routing it and a whole bunch of other issues. And that got into some of the problems they had with adopting the legislation. Anyway, so yeah, it makes some sense for us to look at. I agree with you 100%.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, I understand, I think I understand your question, but we did start talking about solid waste after the governor made his proposal to create the Connecticut Solid Waste Authority, or it was supposed to be a replacement for Mura, and take the reserves of Mura and basically run an agency and then demolish and clean up the site of the old CRRA site. And I think included in that was a few things about the landfill, but also about that. So we did, at that point, Scott's right, we had been talking about sludge. And so our interest in it, or at least mine anyways before, was, looking for a replacement for the multi-heart thing. That I know it can last well into the future, but it doesn't have the capability of I don't know what you'd say, of destroying PFAS. And we thought that, a look at paralysis and, the extreme high temperatures that are used in that process does have the capability. And looking at the answers to these questions, it does answer that question. Basically says that at those temperatures, PFAS is destroyed. And I think, every couple of months it goes by, there's a new story about PFAS, and that, it's being found in other public water supplies, not in ours. I think we did the testing on ours. They have to do it every quarterly or something?
Water, yeah.
Yeah, so the other agencies, and I think they test wells as well as public water supplies that use wells. So it was a concern about, and also about the effluent that's coming out of the landfill, that there's PFAS and that we have to have some way to deal with that. So that was at least part of why we wanted to look at it. And then the solid waste issue was added to it. Now, it's not like we asked for that, but in 1981, MDC didn't ask to be to be, put in charge of, the plant for 30 years either, but was the decision between the legislature and the governor's office back then that, the MDC had the capability as an operating engineer type agency to run a plant like that, and they needed of the partners to that, they needed a 100% public partner, which is what the MDC became and ran that plant. So, I think it's not just the governor and legislature are looking at solid waste, MSW now. You got CROG with some sort of task force doing it as well. I think it's time that we need to get representation at all of these. I'm sure CCM is going to get involved in this at some point. That the MDC needs to be a participant in that, and I think that whether or not we go forward with a plan that includes MSW at the plant, or that we just decide that we're going to be a place that can dispose of PFAS, on not only on behalf of our own towns, but on some for other other non-member towns or whatever. I think that it's still worth taking a really close look at what these people have to offer. You don't have an offer like this from anyone else. We don't have a new technology offer yet from anyone else. And Scott says if they can show us that it's operating somewhere, why wouldn't we look at it? It was beginning to operate in the video thing, but it's 3.5 years old or 3 years old or something.
3 years old.
So I think that if there's more that we can see. I think they sort of differentiate in the answers here. They sort of differentiate between solid waste and some other stuff was maybe just plastics or medical waste. And it's not like they were confined. If you read this the way I read it, it's not like they were confined to that. It's that's what they were asked to do. And what he's saying here is, okay, you're asking us to consider MSW as well, so that's what they're doing for us. But in some of the other situations, they were specifically designed for medical waste or plastics or something like that. So this is what they're working on now. But I'm anxious to see something more current than 3 years ago and see where they're standing.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So that was my basic question, because you start talking about the other questions that we've asked. The basic question is, does this exist? I know they've said it exists and they said it does X, but I'm from Missouri. Show me, right? So
Everybody says the same.
right. So the point is, just like we said to REA, you've got this commercialized in the UK based on the video. It was 3 years ago. Give us an update. Show us that it's operational. There's 40 people working there. They also identified New Haven Hospital in East London. So give us something that we can say, yeah, that we see that working, and then provide us with, they've got an air consultant, which is great. Have the air consultant verify that what they're saying is actually happening and occurring, and they're achieving those air emissions at those facilities. So that's my basic question, and we could keep talking, but that's really where I.
Okay. David and then Puka. David and then Puka.
If we don't go into municipal waste, what do we do with it? I'm not sure what it's for. Now, if we go into municipal waste, this CTEC thing, what I read, I'm not worried about, like I say, the millings and little things, but it's just that they provide just your last thing at the end. Deep wants us pretty clearly to separate it. So what they did offer, that Canadian company, was, this is the $400 million solution, everything separated, do it, that's what they want, and then not just take the sludge and put it into the CTEC. And CTEC would be the little bit at the end, just to destroy it. No, but now, so the question we need as a group, are we interested in going that $400 million? If you don't do that, I'm not sure what CTEC has to offer per se. It's great, but
Right.
I myself, I like to see us do the recycling, do it right. I'm not worried about CTECs. I mean, that's going to fall out if they do the last 3%. That's all they're doing, right? Because Deep was real clear that they wanted everything separated. Then whatever's left, CTEC will take care of, which is a small amount.
And I think
That's the
CTEC,
group.
to their credit, they did say in the meeting, they said a couple of things. We've talked about this numerous times, that they are not, taking this human sludge off the table for a minute. They've said that they're not processing human sludge, right? They might have a plant that's accepting some portion of human sludge, but they're not processing 100% human sludge. But on MSW, their website, that's what they focus on is MSW and medical waste.
If someone said, let's do a $400 million solution, CTEC's the last 5%. I'd like to spend time on all the recycling equipment, how to get everything separated, who's doing that. They get to that last 5%, and CTEC will be fine.
But you got to remember this. I mean, we have a process, right? So the whole idea of this committee is looking at new technology, right? Is there a new technology out there that's better than the best thing, and is it proven? So that's the process. Then when and if the committee decides, you know what, there is a technology out there that we could implement, because Deep has had problems with MSW plants. We call mass burn. They don't like, right? They want to recycle. So we get all that. And if there is a technology, we can't write an RFP that's written around a specific technology, right? We have to write an RFP that says, we're looking for someone to process MSW, X amount of tons, you got to recycle, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it would open the door for the Wheelabrators of the world and whoever. But at least we understand ourselves what gasification is and what it does and what it can do versus the old mass burn or like we had the RDF facility in the past. So we'll have to go through a process, Commissioner, at any point that you decide to move forward. The first question I've got here is, we're talking about technology from Missouri. Show me it's working somewhere, and give me some data that shows that equipment working in Essex, London is actually producing this emissions, right?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay.
I think we have to start setting up the new goal. Once you determine that this is what we want to do, then we should also amend or create the new RFP, requesting people to show us and plan that some of those people can be commissioned to visit those sites. Come back, send the report. Basically, yes, it appears feasible. Then again, you will have to go back again for real RFQ and etc. and see who in the world will come out to propose that. If we find that technology is feasible, work is working, and we are convinced that it can be done, and we don't have to automatically settle with same company, but we can settle with whoever is successful at a cost-benefit basis.
Okay.
I just want to say that I agree with Commissioner Patel. What I was trying to add to it before is that there are other agencies and entities that are looking at almost the same issue, and that we need to have a place with them, and they should be part of anything that we look at as well. I think. Think about it. If we do come upon something that does work for us, they're going to want to know about it as well. And certainly to provide the kind of funding to do something like this, we're going to need the support of not the city of Hartford had their solid waste task force. Like I said, CROG has one. The governor and the legislature are looking at this. I'm sure Deep is going to have to be an intimate part of all of this because of they're the regulatory agency in charge of this. So I would expect that as we start to move forward, that somehow we reestablish our regional planning activity. I'm not sure why we ever stopped it. I mean, it's part of the original emblem logo. The MDC is public water supply, waste disposal, and regional planning. I think that we've got to be a part of that because this is that important, you know. Anyway, I do agree that we should be working towards getting something more specific as a proposal. This was just an RFI, you know, getting something more specific that at least identifies who the participants in this could be, with an RFQ that says, okay, you have the experience and the expertise to be part of this. We get to that stage, but at that point, we really need to be part of a regional solution for this.
I agree, but I think where we are in the process now is we're looking at information. We're trying to sift through information that gets brought to us or not. The original concept, when I first bumped into this, was a year and a half ago, was the gasification and pyrolysis system and the ability to generate significantly greater heat than we produce in the multi-hearth incinerator. And if you look at the process that they used in the gasification and pyrolysis system, the electricity issue and thermal discharge is the thing that caught my eye. Because if you look at the thermal, they can operate at 1400 degrees centigrade. And above that now they're claiming with some of the other technology they have. PFAS, when we originally talked to them, we weren't talking about PFAS. They now, according to the information they're providing us now, have a process that will eliminate PFAS, that'll burn at 1100 degrees centigrade, which is below what the maximum they're burning at now with the existing technology, okay? And if that's the case, and we can convert that thermal heat as we do now in our waste and our heat recovery system, and they claim that you're going to be able to reap probably 6 to 7 times the number of kilowatt hours out of that heat recovery system. I think now, what are we doing about it? How much heat are we generating?
Well, we
in the
generate
area,
just under 2 megawatts of power.
2 megawatts of power. And they're claiming with their heat issue that they can do significantly more than that. So let's put that in context of where we stand now with electricity, because we do have significant amount of natural gas we use and a very significant amount of electricity that we consume. And based on what CTEC showed us, remember, in 2020, I think it was 22, was the last time we went out? 22.
For electricity?
Electricity. 22.
Probably
22.
21.
21,
When did we
22,
get
20.
electricity?
Yeah,
last time?
21. 21, 22, 23, we have to go out again in 24. When we went out in 21, we went from 6 cents a kilowatt hour in cost when we put it out. We went, and I think that was somewhere about a total cost of about $5 million. We went out in 21, we got out with a bid of 9 cents. So we went from 6 cents to 9 cents, which converted into real budgetary dollars of about 5.7 to, I believe we're at $9.7 million. Now the actual, if you look at the market right now, we're somewhere in the area of 18 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour that you're paying for in electricity that you get in your home. So you're going to be a little bit below that. We now have to go out again in 24. That's only, what, 14 months from now. That marketplace will hit us probably double our 9 cents. So we'll be at 18 cents. And that's a very probable number, and considering you're going to have a 3-year contract that you're going to enter into with these people. That gets us up in the area of almost 18 to 19 million dollars in electricity in a period of 4 years. So if we can offset that cost by producing the kind of thermal heat we can in a heat recovery system and get close to what we're using now, which I think is about, what's it, Tom? About 40 totally in the total district. Down in the four plants, I think we're using 30 million kilowatt hours a year. And if you take in the reservoirs and the other stuff, I think it's another 7. I think about 7 million. So we're somewhere in the area of 36, 38 million kilowatt hours a year that we're using. If we could take that offline and look at the future where we're going with energy, we're talking somewhere in the area of 18 to 20 million dollars that we're self-sufficient. It puts us into the whole race and the question of how do we manage electricity in the state of Connecticut from the distribution companies that in the last legislature were under enormous fire because of the cost of electricity in the state of Connecticut. That's a major issue we're looking at. Pura in 2019 created the Efficient Electric Partnership, and that was in 2008. And that was supposed to get new technologies we would look at, whether it was before the meter or after the meter, that would benefit those distribution companies in reducing the electric costs. Well, in 2019, they went a step further and they created the Innovation Energy Solutions technology legislation, which the legislature gave Pura the authority to go out and look for new technologies that would be either before the meter or after the meter. And they developed a strategy by 2020, 2021, which became the Innovative Electric Solutions process, which says that Pura has the authority to go out and look at processes, technologies, and do pilot programs on these types of technologies, not to exceed a total amount on each one of them of more than $5 million. In the legislature, in that, the legislature gives Pura the authority to use each year in this endeavor to look at technologies that are going to offset the cost up to $60 million a year of ratepayer subsidy. Now, ratepayer subsidy, that's not a lot. It's a lot, but when you look at what they're looking at, solar alone exceeds that by 3 times. You're paying on your electric rate a renewable energy factor in there, which they take and they subsidize solar. Solar's not something that people make money. It's being subsidized by ratepayers. That's how it gets it down to the utilization by the regular electric user to use it, and they pay for the capital cost, the installation, and everything else. Well, that far exceeds what you're paying for the solar, but the solar offsets things as its value to the total cost. So there's $60 million that they're now using, that being Pura, can select someone with technologies that will benefit that. What we're doing would benefit the elimination of cost to the electric companies, the distribution companies, and to Pura and to the electric rates in Connecticut. So if someone's got a technology that burns hotter and we can recover more thermal from it, and that's a fact of life and they can demonstrate that to us, there's no reason why we can't, as an agency, look at that technology, go to Pura and request that we be considered to do a pilot on this technology and what the benefits would be, and see whether they'd be willing to give us money towards providing a pilot. Because let's go back to another thing that CTEC did say to us, that they do have a module technology that can deal with sludge and can deal with PFAS now, they're claiming. And if they do have that, as Scott says, show me where it is and how it works, it would give us the ability to go to Pura and ask that question and look at them and send our staff people and whoever we send out to the locations where they're using this and see if it's viable. But you're right.
Yeah, and I just to say, to add to that.
I'm just talking about that's the long-term
Yeah, the policy,
thought,
you're
the
right.
policy that I had and the board had when they talked about creating a technology committee. So
Right.
rather than being reactive in the
Right.
process, we are proactive.
Right.
And that's where we should be.
And just to add to that, just the discussion. So just to clarify to your question, Commissioner Drake, you know, are we going to use it for sludge or are we going to use it for MSW? You know, the RFI is written around MSW and then mixing in some portion of sludge. In the initial discussions with CTEC, and as the chairman said, they initially said, we've got this little box and you
Right.
can put sludge in it and it will pop out 2 megawatts of power. They said at the proposal, they don't process human sludge 100%. There's some mixture within their 40 plants, but they don't process human sludge anywhere, except some of the 40 plants. There's some
They're
portion.
using that to do
They're
that.
using that, right? So the MSW is, as the chairman said, is needed if you were even able to, under a permit from DEEP, to get a permit to process. I would think, based on the governor standing on the steps of the Capitol saying we have got an MSW problem, I believe that DEEP would support a permit for MSW. You have to, right? Even though it's an environmental justice community, you got to do something because everyone's. I don't know if they'd ever allow you to mix human sludge with the MSW. I don't know. They might, but we don't know. But again, before you even get up here, we're up here and we haven't even, in my mind, show me a piece of equipment operating somewhere that's doing what you're saying it can do. That's all I'm asking. So that's the starting point for me. When you start talking about processing human sludge, like we were in the past, mixing it with 60%, the gentleman in the video recommended sawdust, but the proposal from Mr. Wild was 60% wood chips. So that's what we did. But the point is, just show me it working. Show me the factual stuff, and then you can kind of move on from there. That's all.
Yeah. Let me just, because we're in this conversation. I think Scott's right. I think that they have, at least since I talked to them, other than the questions in here, they have proceeded to patents that they possess in those areas. As Scott said, they do have operating entities that use some of these modules for the use of sludge, human sludge, but not in a system that could be sold commercially for that purpose. They claim that that's what they're producing now. Where is it operational? I don't know. But they have a whole bunch of things where they do medical, they do hospital waste and things of that nature, okay? And apparently from what is said in this information, that one of the reasons they got into the solid waste issue was that the company that was doing it was using their heat exchangers, which is a significant issue because they claim they've got the best heat exchanger on the marketplace, and that's what gives them the benefit to take thermal energy and do electricity through heat transfer, heat capture. So, you know, there's got to be something that they're operating out there jointly or something on those things. So again, that's why we're in this process of seeking information. We're not in the process of hiring someone or making a selection of them. We're trying to see what pieces can be put together, or if someone walks in the door and has a magic box and they said it works in East Cupcake, we know at least it's in East Cupcake. We can go look at it. We don't know, as Scott says, where that exists, but they claim that they're operating some system that they showed us here someplace. So that's where it stands. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Adler. In the last agenda, we did get a video on the maximum yield technology. but it doesn't really identify us necessarily as one of their plants. It's just a plant. So I would say, I'd like to propose then I offer a resolution that the committee recommend that staff goes back to our presenters and ask them for more detail, show us some.
Or bring them in, have them get the
Sure,
details and bring them
absolutely.
into the committee.
With specific plants, or a plant or two, whatever,
Okay. I think that's something that we should do to follow that up. I believe we have additional people coming in
We do.
to see us. Kelly, who do we have on the schedule? Because there's some we're not gonna look at, but there's
There's two.
Three or
There's two
two
more
or-
meetings.
Yeah.
So, Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer. We have a set of 3 meetings. One is a for the presentations from LCI and Green Technology together.
Is Vox part of that group too? I think it is with Green. Vox is the European technology people.
It may be, I don't, off the top of my head.
Implementer. They don't come up, they have no technologies that they control. They've got a relationship with, I think it's Vox, VOX, which is a Swiss company. VOW, that's what it was. And in Europe, it's a Switzerland company. And I think they have some kind of technologies, how they're using it, we don't know. But Green is basically an implementer. They'll build this stuff. They aren't the owners of the technology.
This Canadian company that CTEC brought in.
It's what?
The Canadian company that CTEC brought in, that Andy just talked about. Can we
Yeah.
bring it in? We have to go out again. This is the MYT group.
We can request information from them. Staff can request information. That's what Scott would do. I mean, our staff is acting as our staff.
Sure.
And what they're gonna do is go out and seek what we're interested in and come back with it, right?
These guys right here.
Yeah.
That's the system we're talking about.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I think we're not, if the committee so chooses to ask us to go back and ask more information, again, I'm not gonna ask 80 questions. I'm gonna ask very basic questions. We just wanna show me, right? Show me where you're operating. I'd like to see their third-party administrator of the air emissions verify that what they're giving us is actual from that facility in the UK. The other issue the next question I would have once we get past that, they've talked about, and this goes back to your question, Commissioner Drake, about do we do MSW or just try and burn sludge? And that's for me, burning sludge is we've talked about this in the past. You either need a drying agent, as they had said, which is wood chips or wood sawdust or MSW, or you would need to pre-dry it. Now, in their presentation on their white paper, in our discussions 2 years ago, there was no discussion about pre-drying, but we've identified what pre-drying costs. Pre-drying is very expensive. It would cost us about $3 million a year in gas to pre-dry to 5% water. So the next question would be, if you haven't done solid waste anywhere, as they had said in the meeting, then I'm assuming you're not pre-drying it anywhere in the world as well. So how do you prove to us that you can actually pre-dry solid? This technology is best served with dry plastics and products like MSW, medical waste. That's where they achieve their baseline for their highest efficiency. Water's not good for the technology. So I think the first step is if there's any other questions that the committee would like us to ask, but I think the basic question is, you've got these areas identified as working. Please provide us with additional information that we can verify that it is actually operational. And then if there's any other questions that you
What
have,
their existing.
yeah, what their
patents
capacity is, what
and
their,
what patents they.
what patents they have.
This company was called HRO Ecosystems out of Canada. That's what CTEC was partnering up with.
Okay.
Yes, but that's the company I'd like to.
But
Okay.
that's the group that's using their heat exchanger, and that's how they get into the relation.
What the thing they really had is they had the big separation system. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They had the whole.
And they have 6 or 8 locations that are operational in
Yeah.
in the world. I don't know where.
Sure. And the simple fact of separation and recycling, right? I'm guessing, I don't know if this is true or not, but let's say there's 1,000 recycling plants across the country. There's plenty of them. So yeah, of course there is. But the question becomes, where can you pick out a gasification unit? You know, and we've, in our white paper, and we've talked about this, it's an uprising new technology. It's been around forever, used in very specific industries. But I just think we need to just ask the basic question.
Yeah.
Just give us some
Right.
data, information on the facility that they list as at the hospital.
Just educate me. Are there any in New England recycling places?
What's that?
Educate me. Are there any in New England recycling places? So they take all the trash goes in there and all separated out with the deep ones.
Yeah, we just closed one down about
No, I
2000.
understand when they were closed. I mean, I'm saying, is there any? That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
All have a
Yeah,
different,
well,
all the
different,
technologies make representation of separating out things that are not able to be put
So
in.
just again, so there's a place in New England where people can bring trash. It's all separated plastics, metals, with everything else. I didn't think any existed anymore. I thought.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure there are because we had one here built in the 80s.
There's not a solid waste
I didn't
operation.
think there was. That's why everything was going on high.
We'll check that. We'll check that. It's not
Otherwise, we'd-
uncommon, I guess, is my
We'd be
point.
shipping in
right?
New England and not going to Alabama with our.
I just think there was. When you said that, I said, "Geez,
Yeah.
it's not my world. I don't know." Okay.
So should this be a formal
Commissioner Adams.
resolution that, with a second? No?
I think Scott's laying out what he's gonna have to do,
Yeah.
and it's not like we can't discuss this internally.
Yeah.
When you get the information or. when
I
you
think
pursue.
what we are going to do is we're not going to recreate anything. We've got questions here. We're just going to pick out the questions that we think we need more information on.
Good.
If there's anything that's come out of this meeting that we want to add, we'll make sure that the committee is okay with, just like we did in the past. I know Judy Allen has given us questions, so we'll make sure that everybody's comfortable with the questions. Is that fair to?
Yes.
A clarification?
Yes. I just want to clarify a couple of things. I have no problem doing that, but I would like to stick to the schedule that we have for the final 2 because we keep changing it and they've made flight arrangements in some cases.
We are not changing that. We wanted to know what we were doing, so
Yep.
we didn't get into that kind of a conflict.
And I just to finalize the other presentation, 3 weeks worth of presentations, the presentation, and then the post is with CDM Smith. And that's in October.
CM Smith, but they're not
CDM.
actually doing anything. They just.
Nope, but you chose as a committee to meet with them to go over their proposals. I think, Scott, they had one in particular that you were interested in learning about.
The fluidized bed incineration, yeah.
Correct.
Let's see.
So we will pass around we'll put together as staff the questions, share them with the committee. Once we get your go-ahead, we will share them with CTEC, get their written responses, and then share them with the committee while we're continuing on our schedule. Okay, great. Thank you.
Quick one. Are we assuming PFAS is all going into our sludge? And that's not a good assumption. Maybe you can ask your incinerator guys. A lot of it's got to be going into the water, right? So the idea of PFAS in the sludge, I think that's easy, but
Well,
there
but
can't
that,
be much going into
If you
that.
look at, go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
I'll go after you.
sorry. If you look at what we said in the white paper, right? So you just got to think of it this way. The sludge is created from water, right? That's why it's 75% water. So you get this body of water that comes through the plant, and you spin it into like a dryer, and you come up with sludge. It takes the solids out, right? But the rest of it, pick a number, 95 to 99% goes to the river.
That's where the PFAS goes.
So thank you.
We keep worrying about PFAS in the state.
Thank you. Thank you.
But that is one of the issues that you raise. That's one of the issues you raise in the use of thermal heat
Right.
to be able to dry it as it comes in.
Really, I'm with you. What's getting analysis? The amount of heat they get up to 200-something degrees with all the water going down the river, you die. You die. Again, I love to see the numbers, but you die.
They made a representation on this.
Yeah, but no, they didn't. I think what they have represented, we're talking apples and oranges here. What CTEC has represented is that they can destroy the PFAS within the sludge. They're not proposing to destroy the PFAS in the water.
Go back and read what they said.
No, I don't know, Bill, because they couldn't, because you're talking about 60 million gallons of water a day. After we wrote the white paper, this changes every day, right? This changes every day. There was articles, and I provided the articles to everybody. There was some California. There was a research in California,
That's disappeared.
and they were mixing hydrosulfuric
The stuff that if you put on your hand, it disappears.
phosphates, and they mixing it, and it was at 300 degrees, it kills PFAS.
Right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
We haven't heard from them lately.
I know. It's
That was in a test tube that someone had in
We're running out of time. One last technical question based on CTEC, and I like CTEC. But our cogeneration plant is not as efficient as CTEC to make electric power out of the sludge. I'm sure it's not, but it's got to be
You're
close.
talking about the thermal issue?
Yeah, to get the electricity out of it, and we get CTEC's got to turn into electricity. To
Multi-hearth incinerator does not, Tom. You can.
That's what I'm saying. We way under efficiency in that. I like CTEC.
It's not efficiency, it's the ability what the thermal comes out with from
Goes to a
gasification.
cogeneration plant. We're burning it. It's going to cogeneration plant.
so the incinerators operate at what efficiency, Tom?
Well, it's difficult just to put a single efficiency number on it, right? Because of the variation in the sludge and the production of electricity. But we're producing about 30% of the plant needs. My question is, how have you figured out to defy the laws of thermodynamics and claim to get 10 times the energy?
That's the
out
number
of
we
it?
need to review.
We go in at a certain temperature and we come out at a couple hundred degrees and we've extracted all the energy. Our turbine as an efficiency is probably in the high 80s to low 90s of efficiency. So I don't know how you improve on something that's 85 to 90% efficient.
My question.
That's what we operate at.
But you're really comparing apples and oranges here, because you got to really understand that what we're doing with the incinerators, we know you got facts, right? We don't have any facts here. We just got data. So the first step before you start comparing apples and oranges is let's see the data. Let's see factually this operating. And then you can start to say, is it possible to put in X amount of BTUs and get 10 times as much out at the other end? I don't know.
You got 30%.
Well, the question becomes, how hot
Yeah,
you
how
can
hot
burn
does it get? So I
And
think
one is, they're different operations. One's a molecular movement, the other one is a flame, or
Yeah,
that's
so-
what you're burning. That's what the difference is. The molecular movement creates more heat than you're putting in, I guess. I don't know.
So we need some more.
Mr. Chairman, can I, if I may? So with respect to PFAS, it's not in our drinking water supply. So it doesn't go from the drinking water supply to the sewage treatment thing. I mean, PFAS enters our sludge, I think mostly from the landfill. The leachate from the landfill is loaded with PFAS. We know that. But the process that CTEC, if you read the answer to the question, the process that CTEC uses, high temperature burn, can destroy PFAS as municipal solid waste comes in. That's where all the PFAS is, in the solid waste. It's not in the sludge. Although there's some in the sludge because of the landfill and other I'm sure it enters the system in other places. So people don't eat PFAS and then dump it into the sewage, make a donation to the National Trust in the sewage thing. So, but the point about PFAS is that there is a way that, and they mentioned that there is a way that's accepted by EPA and others to destroy PFAS. And that's by burning it at these higher temperatures. And as Scott said, these other chemicals that are used in the burning phosphates become, I think, a byproduct of the burning of that or something. But this technology does have a way to eliminate PFAS from the waste stream, and especially from solid waste. It would have to dry out sewage, yeah, obviously, and anything would have to dry out sewage to get it out. And that's going to be up to, EPA and DEP to decide. Don't forget, the MDC is only one of, I don't know how many sewage treatment plants there are in the state of Connecticut, maybe you know, Scott, but, and places where, contaminants enter the river through some process and then an outfall. But there's no way to stop that from turning up in the Connecticut River or any river in Connecticut. As long as PFAS exists, it's going to get into the waste stream one way or another. If we have a technology that removes it, at least in part from the waste stream, and then destroys, solid waste that has PFAS in it, cardboard and all things that have PFAS in it, then at least we're pointed at, the future, which everybody's telling us that this is a major concern. PFAS is a major concern for the environment. So I just, I don't think there's an expectation that you can burn water. But we can, so.
The big problem is with the sludge you have, you can't put it on the land like we did before. You can't put it in a landfill, and they won't let you burn in an incinerator that we have because of the air quality issues. That's basically
the same for fog. You can't put grease in the landfill anymore, and you can't just go burn it.
Down to zero. So we're trying to find a way that we can incinerate it. We do make revenue from it, but you also would get revenue sources out of hospital waste. A whole bunch of other opportunities would give the district the ability to do that, which is way more competitive than anybody else is doing.
And if you just focus on, again, where do you put your eggs in? What basket do you put your eggs in? As Commissioner Salemi said, we tested our influent. So influent is the wastewater going into the plant. Effluent is the water going out of the plant, right? We tested both influent and effluent, and we're below the standard that the EPA and the state just set. But as I mentioned in the water testing we're doing, EPA, once they get this data over the next 4 or 5 years, they're going to explode. They're going to create so many regulations. But the majority of the PFAS, as Commissioner Salemi said, is in the trash. It's, you're talking about 4 parts per trillion. Is it trillion or million? Trillion. 4 parts per trillion is coming into the plant. Ironically, and there's studies out there, it bumps up a little bit. We don't know why, but it bumps up to like 5. And California did a study that showed the same thing. For some reason, it's bumping up. I think it's the polymer that we add, part of the process. But in trash, you're probably talking about thousands of parts per trillion because you got all of the plastics and you've got all of the Teflon that they put on pans. And so if you want to really solve PFAS problems in the future, even Deep is the one who said landfills are the biggest problem, right? So before you dump stuff into a landfill, make sure there's no PFAS in it, right?
Let's get the information.
Scott, when they tested after the fire at the airport and they tested the Farmington River, and it went through our plant, and they said, "Oh my God, there's all kinds of PFAS coming through your plant." Well, it was from the fire extinguishing materials, yeah. But they also tested upstream of our plant, the Farmington River, and there's PFAS in that too. Yeah. And then there was like 9 landfills on the Farmington River all the way up to so that's where it's coming from. It's coming out of landfills, and then when they tested the effluent from our landfill, they found PFAS. That's my understanding. So
yeah, it's a problem for sure.
That's why we put 40 million gallons a day into the river.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get that information, and then we can further do that. We're going to also look at additional people that Kelly has already scheduled and we don't want to disrupt their schedule or if I'm, in doing that.
We're ready to go anyway.
Again.
If I could just ask Kelly a question on process, Kelly. So when we get the responses back from CTEC, we don't need another meeting to submit to the committee. We can just send them the data, and then we, at a next meeting, whatever that is, we have time, we can talk about it. It's fine. So we don't have to have a separate meeting.
Okay, we're finished with this issue?
Yeah.
Can I raise one other issue? And that's the issue I started to talk about, the Pura thing. I've talked to our consul, and he's gonna research the legislation, and it's
President.
Chris, it is October 2, 2019, and it's docket number 1712-03. You got that?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, yes, we, Chris Stone, District Council, thanks for that information. We do have that information. We've done a cursory look at the Pura's website. There's information on the IES, which is the Innovative Energy Solutions Fund Program, whatever you want to call it. It's just been, even though it was enacted or enabling legislation was passed in 2019, it's funded for the first time this year. It's funded to the tune of $25 million. They do have that $5 million cap per eligible and approved project. Yeah, they can go up to 60, but right now they've got 25 million. I'm sure, if depending upon the results, they may increase that amount.
I think, Chris, they also did something in the April meeting with technologies that came in before them, whether they approved any of them or not. You'll
Right.
figure that out.
But it's just, it took them a while to get up and running,
Yeah.
but it's up and running. So
Yeah, they had the whole process in there.
we'll look into it. We've got a 3-page summary, and then there's a 68-page deep dive on the Pura's website, which we'll get into.
Okay, further questions? Is there anything else we have to do?
You have to adjourn.
We got the Round the World fund that we have to establish. For
That's okay. Yeah, he's all set with that. He's gonna take it out of his
We
pocket.
can't take you.
I'm not going. He's gonna take it out of his pocket, and I'm not gonna pay. So, just number 5, I guess.
Okay,
Bill.
we got to go to number 5 now. Opportunity for general public comment.
Judy Allen, West Hartford. I'm very concerned. This is a company that a few years ago made a presentation or a sales pitch and then told the world that they were doing a pilot project with the MDC, which was not true. And we had to go back and have them, get rid of that. I also heard a lot of suggestions and promises and theories, but as Scott said, I didn't see anything that was concrete. Here's how we do it. Here's where it's going. I heard them talk about Farmington and what Farmington's doing, and I'm wondering, has anyone talked to Farmington just like did they do with us? Are they doing with Farmington? Like I said, there's no way to confirm their claims. And does MDC want to be a guinea pig for this technology? I would have real concerns as a customer of the MDC that you're going into uncharted waters and attempting to maybe do something that's never been done before, and that we don't have hard data about what this is going to look like. And if it takes 20 acres, where does the MDC have 20 acres to put a project like this? And I really believe that your customers want your focus to be on excellent water, excellent sewage treatment. That's your charge, to provide that. There are a lot of infrastructure things that the MDC has facing, the water treatment plants. I really have problems looking at ways to spend money on other things when there's so much that already has to be done. Thank you.
Dark ages. Further comments? Okay, commissioners' request for future agenda items? If not, the appropriate motion, the motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Objection? We stand adjourned.